Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. We are talking about medical malpractice. I have with us attorney Clint Kelly, and some interesting insights into this world. Let's go to Darlene. Hello, Darlene.
Hello.
Hi. Go right ahead.
I had a hysterectomy back in November, and I got very sick that night and started vomiting. So the nurse that was taking care of me, she called the doctor that was on call at the hospital that night to get something. He ordered Finnegan. Okay, she gave me Finnegan several times that night, but she didn't put it in the tube, and it was never diluted. So as a result of that, my veins were burning up in my hands from this. So I'm in the middle of dealing with this right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I think well, I'm going to talk first. Sure. I think a medical malpractice suit, there would need to be a loss of a limb or death or something. What do you think about this?
Well, it would depend on the extent of Darlene's injuries. I have heard of cases like this where they will, I believe it's called an infiltrate, but they will put the IV into the vein, and the dilution's not done properly, and it can cause a burn to the vein. But I've never seen a case that's really been significant. I've seen some where there's been some scarring, but it's generally resolved. But you bring a good point, Ben, which is these cases are very, very expensive, and so because of that, I'm very particular about the types of cases I take. It's been my experience that juries compensate patients who have very significant injuries, those who, like you said, have had amputations or lost an eye or an organ or death. Someone who is in a wheelchair. I've got one of those cases. Those are cases where not only can I get a jury to compensate if the medicine's right, but also I have a very good opportunity to try to resolve those cases where I don't have to go to trial, because the doctors and the hospitals realize the financial risk in those cases makes it worthwhile to settle. But if the case is too small, if the damages are not very significant, I've found that the doctors or hospitals will just simply litigate it to death, because they figure, look, we're probably going to win, but even if we lose, insurance will be able to cover it. It won't be too painful on us, and so we'll just take a shot, and it's harder to get them to settle. Those are the cases that pain me the most, Ben, because our system is not geared to help those people. There's a huge number of people who are definitely victims of malpractice but don't have significant injuries, and they're never going to see their day in court because I and other lawyers like myself, and there aren't many of us out there, simply can't afford to take them.
And what are some of the barriers? We hear in the legislature all the time, frivolous lawsuits and medical lawsuits, and it's driving up the cost of health care. And so we hear these things all the time, and I know it's gotten harder and harder to file these things.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the barriers that anyone faces if they want to bring a suit like this?
Well, the first barrier is you have to give pre-suit notice to the doctor or hospital before you even file the lawsuit. The idea behind the statute was to have a cooling off period for 60 days where the parties could negotiate a settlement, which has not happened and is not going to happen. And if you screw that up, then your case may be dismissed. You may never get your chance in court, which is why I advise all potential clients to hire a board certified medical malpractice attorney such as myself, because I know how these notice statutes work. The other barrier, and it's a significant one, is you have to have a medical expert on board before you file your lawsuit, meaning you've got to hire a medical doctor who's looked at the file and has come to the conclusion that the case has merit. Otherwise, you can't file that lawsuit. And again, you want a board certified medical malpractice specialist because we have access to these experts. I have a series of doctors who I can contact to review cases. I have a nurse consultant who also has access to experts who can help me find the right expert for the right case. That is an invaluable connection that I have and others like myself have that most attorneys don't. And you can't get to first base without a medical doctor.
How recent has that become law? So you have to have an expert in place that you've paid and one that agrees that you have a case.
Correct.
How long ago did that become law?
That law passed in 2011.
So that's new.
That's correct. And it's made it much more difficult for patients to get to court. And so because of that, you have to basically navigate a minefield to get to the courthouse, and that's why myself, and there's probably a handful, maybe 10 of us in the Nashville area that do this work on a regular basis. We have to keep up with these laws, make sure we keep our experts on board so that we know how to get to court, because most lawyers simply don't know what they're doing when they get to this. I wouldn't take a trademark or patent case. And that's why a criminal defense lawyer shouldn't be taking a malpractice case. Law is becoming almost as specialized as medicine these days.
So when you hear that criticism or complaint that it's these malpractice lawsuits that are driving up the cost of health care, what do you think of that?
Well, tell that to Joan Rivers, who's 6 feet underground right now because her doctor was taking a selfie. I can think of a number of patients who are clearly victims of substandard care. I've got one right now that's in a wheelchair. It was a neurosurgical emergency, bled into his spine, and his neurosurgeon simply wouldn't come to the hospital and see him when he needed him the most. I mean, I can tell you patient after patient after patient where this happens. And the reason why the frivolous lawsuits is this argument is a joke. If I started taking frivolous lawsuits, I'm going to lose them. I'll never get to court. The doctors will fight me and they will beat me. I will spend my money on those cases and I will go broke. So will the rest of the good malpractice lawyers that take cases. We can't afford to take frivolous cases. And so what the people who throw this propaganda out there do is they try to scare the public and make the public think, oh, there's so many lawsuits filed, therefore we've got to cut down on lawsuits. Medical malpractice litigation has gone down 50% over the last 4 years.
Really?
And
50%?
That's correct. They've proven it. The filings have gone down. And there are so many people now that can't even get their day in court because of the fact that these new laws have been passed, the caps, the pre-suit requirements make it so difficult for someone to hire someone like me to get to court.
You mentioned the Joan Rivers case. What are the details behind that? I'm fascinated by some of these cases. When you start looking at the details, there is no way to say, wow, that's frivolous. When you start looking at some of those cases, there's just no way to say that. Joan Rivers, a celebrity, everybody knows, everybody knows her. She has access to all kinds of stuff, best medical care, you would think. And what happened in her case?
Joan Rivers had a procedure, they call it dilatation, where they pass an endoscope down into the esophagus and stretch it. It helps with swallowing. She went to a very, very prominent outpatient clinic to have this done by a gastroenterologist. Long story short, she's under anesthesia. They're preparing to pass the scope down her, and her doctor is having a selfie taken while Joan's right here, and Joan's oxygen saturation begins to drop, her heart rate increases, her blood pressure goes down, and there have been various stories about what caused that, but the bottom line is there was not advanced life support initiated in time to save her life because her doctor was too busy taking a selfie and not paying attention to Joan Rivers. And Joan Rivers was 81 years old, Ben, but she was still selling out shows, still making millions. That's not a frivolous case. And I think what happened in that case, that brought a lot of public attention to the fact that it doesn't matter necessarily, even if you go to the best doctor or to the best clinic, some doctors simply take shortcuts or they're more concerned about other things than their patient, and they will sometimes screw up really bad, and that's what happened with Joan's case.
Did people know that? How did that come to light? Did the family find out about that? And I guess in cases where someone dies like that, how often do you get it? Is it the family has an inkling, or is there a nurse in the room who comes out and says, wait a minute, we should look at this? Or how does it come to light often?
Ben, I don't know how what started this. I do know when I first heard about it, and I think there was some information coming from her daughter, I knew there was a lot of substance to it when the director of the clinic resigned within 2 days of the story coming out. Now, when somebody gets canned like that early, that tells you something really went bad wrong. And then more and more details started getting leaked out, but particularly about the selfie. That was something I think that shocked a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know all the details of it because we only know what was disclosed, and I believe there's been a confidential settlement, a very sizable settlement. But inevitably in those situations, I'll tell you what happens a lot of times in hospitals, nurses will talk about what's happened that they've observed. They may tell the family, or another doctor will tell the family. I've even had situations where a second doctor who's offering a second opinion will tell the client, please go hire a lawyer.
Really?
I think you need to get,
Because that's the other sort of thing that you hear is that doctors are reluctant to criticize other doctors.
Well, then they are, but they'll do it in secret. all the time.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a break. All right, if you want to call in, we want to hear your story. What do you think? Do you have something you think would be a possible lawsuit? Give us a call. There's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.